After months of bombing supposed drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean and hinting at regime change in Venezuela, Donald Trump made it clearer than ever this weekend that he has his sights set on overthrowing Nicolás Maduro. We'll give you his exact quote, but first, Cenk, on that news alone, what are your 2 cents here?
I think we're being incredibly flippant about going into a war that could be absolutely disastrous. So are we really gonna go to that war? Jordan's gonna explain it to you, and then we'll break down who might be able to stop it. So Jordan, you first.
Well, during his interview on 60 Minutes this weekend, Norah O'Donnell asked Trump straight up, are we going to war against Venezuela? Trump, I doubt it. I don't think so. But they've been treating us very badly, not only on drugs. They've dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country that we didn't want. People from prisons. They emptied their prisons into our country. He continued, and every one of those boats that you see shot down, and I agree, it's a terrible thing, but every one of those boats kills 25,000 Americans. Every single boat that you see that's shot down kills 25,000 on drugs and destroys families all over our country. And that is absurd, that is incorrect, that's an outright lie. But then O'Donnell asks, is the military operation around Venezuela about stopping narcotics? Or is this about getting rid of President Maduro? Trump says, no, this is about many things. O'Donnell asks, are Maduro's days as president numbered? Trump says, I would say yeah, I think so, yeah. Then O'Donnell brings up reports that Trump is allegedly considering strikes on the mainland of Venezuela, which Trump neither confirmed nor denied. O'Donnell asks, and this issue of potential land strikes in Venezuela, is that true? Trump says, I don't tell you that. I mean, I'm not saying it's true or untrue. I don't talk to a reporter about whether or not I'm gonna strike. Cenk, there is a lot here. What do you think their motive is, and what do you make of this seemingly creeping attitude toward regime change in Venezuela?
Okay, so the number one issue here is Trump saying, yeah, the Maduro's days as president are numbered. So that means most likely we're going to murder him, and that's called regime change. Jordan, it reminds me, because we were actually on the air before the Iraq War started. We were one of only 2 shows nationwide that opposed the Iraq War, and we did it fervently. Back then, we were considered radicals for opposing the Iraq War. And the thing that haunted me from those days was not just all the lying, the lies about weapons of mass destruction. Obviously, Iraq didn't attack us. That was just a fabrication of mainstream media and Dick Cheney and the politicians, the neocons, etc. But the generals had done this presentation for the troops on what they were going to do to take over Iraq. And it had 4 parts. They're like, okay, this is how we enter the country. This is how we enter the capital. This is how we gain control of the government, right? And then stage 4 was what we do after we quote unquote win, right? And it famously had 3 letters on it, TBD, to be determined. So we went into the Iraq war, started a giant disastrous war without having any idea what we were gonna do when we quote unquote won and took over their government. So if we go murder Maduro, or we drop a bomb on him like Israel does, like, oh, okay, international law doesn't exist. It's only for suckers who don't have enough power and they follow it, okay? But we get to bomb any country, murder any president. We don't have to check with anyone. We don't have to declare war. We don't have to do anything. We just bomb them and murder them, okay? Now, first of all, that's not the American way. It certainly shouldn't be the American way. And it certainly shouldn't be the way for a guy who ran on an anti-war campaign. That's pretty freaking obvious, right? But even if you said, hey, you know what, I have no moral qualms with it, and America's #1, so we don't have to follow international law. We can kill and invade anyone we like. And I switch my mind. I'm no longer anti-war. I love war, totally needless war with Venezuela on behalf of oil companies and Marco Rubio and his weirdo plans about deposing the Cuban government. And first he has to knock out the Venezuelan government. I'm all in on that. But even so, guys, yes, but what do we do when we have Venezuela? Okay, so we murdered Maduro, then what is TBD? What do we do then? I don't know. Seems to be the answer from the Trump administration, which is just, I mean, and we're not allowed to say the R word anymore, but you know what that is. That's, okay, let's put it this way, ridiculous, okay? Now, Jordan, last thing on the evidence and facts we already showed, on the Trump interview, come on guys, even if you're MAGA, like you're hardcore cat turdy MAGA, right? Every one of those speedboats that has a range of 100 miles, Venezuela's 2,000 miles from America, had enough drugs on it to kill 25,000 Americans. Come on, no person believes that. You could be like the slowest person in America and you wouldn't believe that outrageous lie, right? How could a speedboat have enough space for to have like so? It would take tankers and tankers of drugs to kill 25,000 Americans because they're not all injecting it into our veins. It goes to a lot of people and a certain percent. You get it. It's absurd. It's like the ravings of a lunatic mind. I get it. Oh, he's trolling. It's hyperbole. Blah 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 blah. Shouldn't the president be serious for a minute, especially when he's in the middle of starting a war? And no, the Venezuelans are not opening up their prisons like Bane from Dark Knight or whatever and going, Gotham is yours. No, Tren de Aragua is real. It's a real gang. It was here. Anna and I took a lot of heat from the left for saying that it actually exists and actually took over some apartments in Colorado, etc. That was true. Were they sent by Venezuela to conquer America? And they were all taken out of prison. Think about it. That means the Venezuelans are against them because they were in a Venezuelan prison. And they thought, we will now enlist them to invade America. Wait, why would they work with you? You put them in. All right, none of that makes any sense. And here's some definitive proof. Not only have we returned 3 people in boats that we bombed, where some people died, but they didn't. We returned to their home countries, you know why? Because we're like, oh yeah, we have no evidence on them at all. That they're involved in drugs, let alone cocaine, let alone fentanyl, let alone Venezuela, okay? And when today they were asked, hey, who are these folks anyway that you killed? You know, I don't know if you're gonna tell us more about that, Jordan, but Trump government answer was, I don't know, we don't know anybody. We don't know the names of anybody on that boat. Then who'd you kill? How do you know you got the right guys? Come on.
If you talk to any reporter, or if you just read about the drug trade, the global drug trade, the idea that Venezuela is a major source of drug exports is laughable. It's Colombia, it's their neighbor. That's where cocaine comes from. A large portion of the global cocaine supply comes from there. And then even if you were to entertain the idea that Venezuela somehow is a major supplier of cocaine, which again, it's not. The idea that each little boat kills 25,000 people. Think about cocaine overdoses. The risk there comes from the incorporation of fentanyl, which the administration wants you to focus on China for that. So in no way does this make sense. It's ultimately about oil. But let's talk about some of these strikes on these boats. There have been 14 military strikes against alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean that have killed at least 57 people. As you heard earlier, Trump claimed in a 60 Minutes interview that every one of those boats kills 25,000 Americans. His administration, unsurprisingly, has provided no evidence the boats they've struck were even carrying drugs. And there's no way of knowing how many lives would even be saved if they were. And as PolitiFact explained earlier in October when Trump first made this claim, if Trump's statement were accurate, the strikes on 5 boats in less than 2 months would have saved nearly double the number of US lives lost to drug overdoses in an entire year. So it seems he pulled that ridiculous figure out of his ass. And now we're learning that the Department of Defense knows very little about the people they're launching airstrikes at. Last week, lawmakers on the House Armed Services Committee attended a classified House briefing about the strikes with DOD officials. And according to Democrats in that meeting, Defense Department officials do not know precisely who they have killed. Representative Sarah Jacobs said the department officials said that they do not need to positively identify individuals on those vessels to do the strikes. They just need to prove a connection to a designated terrorist organization or affiliate. When we tried to get more information, we did not get satisfactory answers. And again, people need to understand that just like you brought up the Iraq war, Cenk, ultimately it was at the behest of oil companies. That's what they want here. They want access to Venezuela's oil. What's old is new again.
Yeah, and Richard Grenell came out and said it. We quoted it a couple of weeks ago, where he's like, "Well, I already got the oil deal. We bullied and intimidated Maduro enough that he said, yeah, I'll work with your oil companies." And when he says your, he doesn't mean American. He means the ones that are legally bribing American politicians. So they could be multinational corporations as long as they're bribing American government officials, including the Trump administration. And every administration really. Maduro says, I surrender to your corporate donors. And so first of all, that was amazing because both sides openly admitting this has nothing to do with the American people. This has to do with satiating corporate donors that gave money to politicians. Well, at least we used to hide that before. Now it's kind of brazen and out in the open. But even so, it wasn't enough because of something else we reported last week, which is basically Marco Rubio is like mental about deposing the Venezuelan government. Israel somehow weirdly involved, and you can go back and watch those videos and see the whole history of the guys that are providing the so-called evidence, which has been proven to be fraudulent every time against Venezuela. It's not to say that Maduro isn't doing anything wrong. I got no love for Maduro. Venezuela is an absolute mess. And do I think he won the last election? No, I do not think he won the last election, okay? But that doesn't mean we have to invade that country, kill him, and then make it our business. That's the part that's mental. And to the point that Jordan was making, look guys, if it's true that there was enough drugs on those boats to kill 25,000 people. Well, about 75,000 Americans die from drug overdose every year these days, which is a huge number, tragic number. Don't worry, he's sunk 5 boats at least. No, they've had 14 strikes so far. So just sinking 3 of those boats would solve the problem for the whole year. So let's see, if there's no overdose deaths going forward for a year, then Trump was right. Each boat had 25,000 deaths, like the equivalent of 25,000 people dying, that amount of, come on, everybody knows, This is just horse crap. It's some weirdo elitist war in Marco Rubio and Cuban American, by the way, super rich Cuban Americans, feverish dreams about going back into Cuba and reclaiming their casinos and their land and turning it back into a, corporatist dream where they own everything and everybody else owns nothing. They have all these fever dreams, and somehow, of course, the neocons have to get their fingers into every pie. Yeah, war, right? And what are we doing? Who voted for this? Okay, you could say, hey, maybe some Venezuelan Americans are like super happy about it. Maybe you could say some Cuban Americans are thrilled, some pro-Israeli guys, for some nearly inexplicable reason, but we did explain it last week, are happy. But in terms of actual Republican voters, independents, Democrats, who asked for this? Outside of the elites, absolutely no one asked for this war. So if he actually goes through with it and they kill Maduro and they start bombing the Venezuelan mainland, it's going to be the most needless war in American history. I can't say world history because there's so many needless wars. But I mean, of all the wars, at least you could have some modicum of explanation for Vietnam and Korea, and you could say it's terribly misguided because of the dumbass domino theory, etc. Iraq, I don't know. They're all so stupid, but this would be the dumbest of all. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.